Welcome to Your Five-Letter Word. I'm your host, Christina, and in each episode, we explore how intentional communication and a strong mindset can transform your business, your relationships, and your personal growth. Whether we're covering communication strategies or sharing tips to shift your mindset, this podcast will help you learn to create more meaningful conversations in your life so that you can deepen your relationships and grow your business. So sit back, relax, and soak in the insights as we dive into today's conversation. Hi, I'm Christina, your host of Your Five-Letter Word, and it's nice to meet you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my podcast in this corner of the world. Now, for the very first episode, I thought I would just dive into a little bit more of my origin story and the reasons behind why I do what I do today. So let me take you back. About 4 years ago. I was in school getting my PhD with 2 young kids at home during the COVID pandemic, which is a whole other story. It was a challenging time. Being in graduate school required quite a lot of work and a lot of commitment. But it also required presenting in front of my department. So that included other professors, my own supervising professor, my peers, other colleagues, every year at a minimum. And so this one year, about 4 years ago, I had prepared a presentation because I knew my time to present was coming up. But I was at home with a newborn baby and another child that was around 2. I was extremely sleep deprived. My babies were waking up about every half an hour still during the night. At one point, I was so sleep deprived that I would start hallucinating. But I was sleep deprived. I was tired, I was stressed, and I was nervous. And I knew that I wouldn't be at my best. And part of me accepted that. But part of me was a perfectionist and really wanted to do the best that I could. So the day of the presentation, it was virtually on Zoom. So that gave me a little bit of comfort and a little bit of freedom knowing I'm not presenting in front of a live group of people. But that was a false sense of confidence. So the day of the presentation, I had to get my kiddos ready so that my husband could take them out the house so they didn't cry while I was presenting on Zoom in front of my entire department. But that took longer than I expected, and I was late to my own department meeting. Not only was I late, but I was drastically unprepared. See, I had taken the time to create my slides and to write out a script of the things that I would like to say. I had even taken the time to send that to my supervisor ahead of time to get her okay on the material that I was using. Again, false sense of confidence because I was so focused on the content that I completely forgot the delivery. So I pulled up my presentation, I shared my screen on Zoom, I pulled out my notes, and my nerves got the best of me. I started reading the entire 15-minute presentation, word for word, from my notes. And as I did that, in a stressed out, tired, slightly monotone voice, I could see through the virtual screens everyone zoning out. Eyes glazing over, distracted, turning off their camera. It was a disaster. At the end of my presentation, see, the standard was for the other individuals in the meeting to ask questions, to ask follow-up questions, to ask related theoretical questions, and to really have a discussion about the research and the material that you had presented. But in my case, not a single person was interested enough, and not a single person cared enough to even know what to ask. And that was one of the most embarrassing times in my entire life. And with that embarrassment came a whole host of other feelings, including disappointment and shame and guilt, because I knew that I could do better. I knew that I was capable of more. I knew that I could be a much better presenter and much better at communicating and much better at sharing this really cool research that I was doing at the time. But I was underprepared and I had too much false confidence, and I had not considered my delivery nearly enough to make the impact that I needed to. And that day was a turning point for me. Now, mind you, I had many presentations after that day, but that one really stands out for me because that was the turning point where I decided I could never stoop to such a low again. And it was really a low standard by my own terms. And that's really where a lot of my intentional communication theory comes from. The idea being that a lot of what we say and a lot of what we do is done in the moment. Sometimes I like to say that we speak mindlessly. We say the first thing that comes to mind. And that's true in many cases, but it's not always the most effective. Learning to speak mindfully, learning to speak with intention, learning to watch your word, it sounds a little bit drastic and it sounds a little bit intimidating for some people, but it has profound implications and it could change the quality of your relationships in such a short span of time. And that's why I value it so much. That's why my purpose is really to share my idea of having intentional conversations and intentional communication, whether that is through presentations, whether that is through work interactions, whether that is through meetings with your clients, or whether that is with your personal relationships. Because every conversation matters, and every conversation leaves a lasting impact. So I think we should make every conversation go as well as we can. But we'll get into that more later in the podcast. So I was in graduate school doing my PhD in social psychology, a topic super near and dear to my heart. I spent several years studying the impact of stereotypes on our implicit attitudes, aka our unconscious mind. Another topic near and dear to my heart. As I mentioned, I've got 2 young kiddos. Super, super proud of them. It has been quite the journey entering motherhood, experiencing parenthood, watching them grow into their own little people with very strong opinions. I now have pivoted into online coaching and consulting. I decided not to pursue the traditional academic path, we can say. I find that I love teaching and I love interacting with students and clients, but in a slightly less structured space. I mean, if I'm being honest with you, I've got mixed feelings about school, despite spending 11 additional years in school getting my doctorate. I think there's so much value in education and there's so much value in school, but so many topics aren't quite taught in the formal educational setting. And there's quite a lot of freedom in pursuing the topics and the knowledge that you're passionate about and that will help you in your current stage of life and just things that you're interested in. So for me, I've always been interested in language. I've always been interested in the nuance of language specifically. I've always been interested in psychology. The two have always gone hand in hand for me. So even thinking back to being a child, I have so many memories of myself just analyzing books and stories and the language and the word choice. Growing up, some people would have said that I'm sensitive. I'm a little bit more of like the sensitive kid, but that's because I was picking up on the nuance of the language that was being used, especially in the way that others were communicating to me. It's a topic that I find fascinating because I truly, truly think that we can say the exact same thing 10 different ways. The catch to that being that each time we say it slightly differently, there's a different nuance and it leaves a slightly different impression. And especially if this is someone that you're interacting with for a longer period of time, those lasting impressions build up and they make a difference in how others perceive you. I believe that our words and the words that we choose to use, especially in the context of speaking freely, speaking our mind, speaking about the first thing that comes to mind, strongly believe that the words you choose to use are the windows to your subconscious mind. And the way that we say things truly reflect what we are thinking inside, whether we know it or not. Now, learning that and understanding that, there's quite a lot of power that comes with that, for lack of a better word. If you're able to listen to what someone says to you, and you can read between the lines and pick up on the nuances of how they say something, how they emphasize something, the word choice that they use, that will give you quite a lot of information about what they're truly thinking. Now, in the context of your personal relationships, romantic relationships, your business relationships, that can have major implications. And more importantly, not knowing how to do that can have major consequences. But we'll save that for a future episode. So that's who I am. That's a little bit more about what I believe in. And so my intention with this podcast is really to just share my insights, my knowledge, my opinion with you guys on all things communication, mindset, and personal growth. I believe all three are tied together, and all three matter if you like to change, especially if you'd like to create long-term change. So if we're thinking of business, even if you have phenomenal communication skills or conversational skills, if your mindset is holding you back, those skills won't get you the results that you want. And that's where personal growth comes in. The key to being willing to take something, to change it, to shift it, to grow from it, and most importantly, to improve on it. Now, at the end of every episode, I'm going to end with your 5-letter word. And that's a 5-letter word that I think matches the theme of the episode to give you a little bit of that extra motivation as you continue on with your day, with your work, with your schedule. So, your 5-letter word for today is begin. Beginnings can be hard. Beginnings can be exciting. Beginnings can be challenging. But anything worth doing needs to have a beginning. So if there's something that you're thinking about, something about starting, trying, continuing with, pivoting, whatever the case, begin. Just keep in mind that no matter who we are, no matter what we are trying, the very first few times we try it are not going to go well. For the most part, no one is good at the beginning. But don't let that stop you, because anybody who is great had to start at the beginning and had to push through those hard days, challenges, and failures to get to the point that they are now. I'm so happy that you're listening to this podcast, and I'm so excited to share more with you soon. Take care. Bye.